As we know, most current applications require a security scheme so that only allowed users can access them. And also, to authorize or restrict access to parts of an application according to the permissions assigned to each user. This means ensuring that all users who log in are properly authenticated and authorized. On the other hand, mobile device applications are distributed applications, so they're partially executed on the device itself. The app's business layer is implemented through REST services with an access URL. And that's why they're exposed to unwanted access. Just like for web applications, we verify that only authenticated and authorized users can access the application, so that the users without corresponding permissions are not allowed to run it. The GeneXus Access Manager, GAM, security module handles authentication and authorization features for both web and mobile device applications. GAM has been developed with GeneXus, so it can be easily integrated into the application's KB in order to solve everything related to its security in a centralized manner. Its objective is to have the security solution used in the most declarative way possible within the application, without adding complexity. GAM also provides a back office that allows creating users, permissions, security policies, and access to objects, among other things. In addition, it provides an API to access many of these features programmatically. To handle authentication on mobile devices, OAuth is used internally, unlike web applications, where web sessions are used. In the case of authorization, its implementation is based on roles. GAM provides several authentication types, which are as follows. Local authentication using GAM, where users and all their credentials are stored in a database that we own. It can also be done remotely, since an application using GAM can become an identity provider. In this case, other applications with GAM can remotely connect to this server and obtain authentication from there. We can also use other external identity providers that provide authentication based on the OAuth 2.0 protocol. Examples include Facebook, Instagram, Google, and so on. In this case, there's no need to define local users. Sometimes it's necessary to integrate our application with others through external authentication. One example of external authentication is to use a SOAP web service provided by the other application and configure GAM to consume this web service. The other application may provide an external program for authentication purposes, and it may not be a web service. In this case, it's possible to configure GAM to accept a custom authentication. For authorization, we define the permissions and execution of the objects and operation modes of transactions. This is defined by granting permissions to each role for every object, and the actual permissions over an object will depend on the roles assigned to users. For example, in mobile devices, there are the work with and panel objects. GAM also exposes an API to access its properties and methods in case it's necessary to do so from our application, and a series of web services that can be used from other applications. We won't go into detail about this functionality in this video. To enable GAM, go to the KB's active version level and set the Enable Integrated Security property to True. When doing so, a dialog box will be opened informing that the GAM module will be installed in the KB, with the solution ready to run on the web and on mobile devices. Once GAM is enabled, we see another property called Integrated Security Level, which allows setting the default value for the security of KB objects. This property is also at each object level, so it'll be possible to customize the security of each object. it has three possible values. None indicates the object will be public, that is to say, it'll have no security features. Authentication indicates that only authenticated users will be able to run it. And authorization indicates that, in addition to being authenticated, users will have to be authorized to run this object. That is to say, they must have the corresponding role to run it. Once we have these security properties configured, GAM objects will be automatically imported into the KB and will have to do a rebuild all. GAM will request to create a database that's independent from the application database. It'll be associated with an independent data store in the KB, so its whole configuration is independent. Let's see all of this in an example. We've created part of an application for a travel agency. We're going to go to the knowledge base properties, click on Travel Agency, the name of the KB, and we're going to enable GAM by setting the Enable Integrated Security property to True. Here we can indicate if we want it to be integrated in the objects used for web applications, and or in case we have some object generated for mobile devices, as in the case of the panels or the work with used for mobile. We can then indicate that it's integrated to this type of applications. In this case, it must be selected because we're interested in applying it to a mobile application. With this combo, we can choose how we want this module to be updated. It can be automatic, we can choose to be asked, or that it's never updated. We confirm. This is where GAM objects begin to be imported. Now, the integrated security level property is available. In this property, we can indicate if we want to enable only authentication, which is the default value, if we want authorization, or if we don't want to have security. We'll leave authentication, which means that to access any object with security enabled, we'll be asked for access credentials. In addition, an application ID is assigned that will be used in the GAM repository to identify the application. Now we have the properties where we indicate the login objects. One in case of authorization error, and another to change the password. In the KB, we can already see that some folders were created in the root module. We also have a new data store, GAM, with the information of that connection. Okay, after finishing the import process, we're going to do a rebuild all. GeneXus tells us that the GAM database was not found, and whether we want to create it. We select yes. The database is created with all the tables and then it's initialized. In our application, we have a menu object named Travel Agency that we set as startup object and has these objects as items so that we can access it. When we run it, the first thing we see is the login screen. Since we configured authentication as security for the whole application. And if we want to enter without a user, we get an error. All of this is provided automatically by GAM. We'll enter with a user that's created by default, admin, with the password admin123. Then we can access the application. This is the end of the introduction to the GAM object for mobile devices.